It's just a reunion, my dad said when I wasn't invited to my brother's big engagement party. I stayed silent while they called 32 times, ignoring me completely, as everything I cared about started falling apart around me and no one seemed to notice. Have you ever poured your heart and soul into your family, only to wake up one day and realize you're completely invisible to them? Because the moment I discovered I wasn't even invited to my own brother's engagement party, that's when my entire world shattered, and trust me, it was just the beginning. There I was, hunched over my drafting table, meticulously adjusting the letter spacing on Mason and Brooke's engagement invitations. Third time, mind you. The afternoon sun streamed in, glinting off the metallic copper accents I'd so carefully added. Perfect, I whispered, almost perfect. My brother deserves nothing less. You know, that typical sibling dedication? Then my phone buzzed, vibrating across the oak, nudging my coffee mug perilously close to the edge. Mason's name flashed on the screen, and I swear, a reflexive smile spread across my face. I opened the message. Parties this weekend guest list is super tight, hope you understand. My hands, mid-adjustment, just froze. I read it again, certain I must have misunderstood. The delicate brush pen slipped from my numb fingers, leaving a cruel, unwelcome streak across the sample invitation. What? I whispered to my empty apartment, the word barely a breath. My coffee mug actually tipped over then, dark liquid bleeding into my precious sketches. I barely even noticed. My eyes, instead, were fixed on the framed photo beside my workspace, Mason, grinning in his uniform, towering over 3 huge care packages. Those care packages? I'd spent weeks assembling them, stayed up all night packing his favorite homemade cookies so they'd make the military mail deadline. The ones he called a lifesaver during his deployment. That feeling in my gut? It was pure, raw disbelief. My hands started to tremble, but I somehow managed to dial my father's number. After 4 rings, his voice came through, distracted, a little annoyed. Everything okay? He asked. Dad, Mason just texted me about some party this weekend for his engagement. I heard myself say, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. There must be some confusion. A beat of silence. Then a sigh. It's just a get-together, Monroe. Nothing formal. I pressed my fingers hard against the bridge of my nose. But I'm his sister. I've been working on their actual invitation design all week. Look, honey, Dad's tone shifted, that dismissive one I knew so well. It's a small thing. At Brooke's parents' lake house. Don't make this a thing, okay? You know how your brother gets when everyone starts making demands. When I make demands, the unspoken accusation hung heavy, suffocating, between us. Right, I managed, my throat tightening. Of course. I hung up before he could hear the crack in my voice, before the tears started. The afternoon light, which had felt so warm moments ago, now felt icy cold as I stared at my design work, hours of unpaid labor for a brother who couldn't even be bothered to invite me to his pre-wedding celebration. My mind flashed back 6 months, the 3 a.m. call from Mason in Germany, desperate because his bank card was compromised. I'd transferred him $2,000 from my carefully managed savings without a second thought. Emergency money, he called it. Still hasn't repaid it. Then I remembered the 3 nights I spent designing their engagement announcement after Brooke decided she just wasn't feeling the professional one they'd already paid for. I'd missed my friend Diane's birthday dinner to finish it by their deadline. The 18 months of his deployment? I sent a care package every single month. Checked in on Mom and Dad twice a week. Helped Brooke move into their apartment so it would be ready when he returned. All of it. Just then, my phone pinged. My cousin Tara just got the invite for M&B's party. You coming up to the lake this weekend? My stomach twisted. An invite? Invite? I whispered. What invite? I typed back. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then back again. Oh, awkward. Thought you'd be there. It's at the Henderson's lake house. Looks like the whole crew is going. I asked her to forward it. There was an uncomfortable delay, a hesitation I felt even through the screen, before it finally landed in my inbox. The screen glowed with a cheerful, nautical design. Join us for a lakeside engagement celebration. The details swam before my eyes, but one thing became terrifyingly clear. This was no intimate gathering. Guest count, 120 plus. I scrolled through names. Mason's work colleagues, distant cousins, Brooke's high school friends. Everyone, it seemed, except me. My phone rang again. Dad. Your brother has his reasons, Monroe, he said, cutting me off before I could even speak. Maybe he thought you'd be uncomfortable with so many people. You know how you get. How I get? My voice barely carried above a whisper. Just respect his decision. That's all I'm asking. After we hung up, I sat there, motionless, staring at my bank account on my laptop screen. Years of careful saving. Years of choosing family obligations over my own personal dreams. My cursor hovered over the Book Now button for the Aspen ski resort, the place I'd daydreamed about for years, the trip I'd put off because someone more important, always needed me. Not anymore. I slammed my finger down on Book Now. First class ticket. Mountain View Suite. 6-day stay. As the confirmation email popped up, I took a shaky breath. I snapped a photo of my passport next to the plane ticket confirmation, uploaded it to Instagram with surprisingly steady fingers, and typed, "When you're not on the list, you make your own." This wasn't just a trip, it was a desperate, defiant act of survival. The first-class cabin wrapped around me in a cocoon of quiet luxury, a world I'd never allowed myself to experience. Soft leather cradled my shoulders as I sipped complimentary champagne, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. A strange, potent cocktail of guilt and exhilaration flooded my system, stronger than the drink itself. Another. The flight attendant gestured to my nearly empty glass. Yes, the word emerged without hesitation, without that familiar mental calculation of whether I deserved the indulgence. Thank you. My apartment's rent for a month wouldn't cover this single flight, but 6 years of emergency funds sat untouched in my account. Emergency funds that were always available when Mason needed them. When the seatbelt sign finally chimed off, I breathed deeper than I had in years. Truly deeper. The Mountain View Suite at the Aspen Lodge made my apartment look like a storage closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed snow-capped peaks, bathed in an alpenglow that turned the white slopes to rose gold. The king bed could fit 4 of me. The bathroom gleamed with marble I'd only ever seen in design magazines. I stood before the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her eyes held a wildness I hadn't seen before, part terror, part defiance. "Who are you?" I whispered to my reflection. My phone vibrated against the nightstand for the 12th time in an hour. Dad's name flashed on the screen then. Disappeared as I silenced it. Mom's text already waited, unread, along with 3 from Mason and 1 from Brooke. I placed the phone face down, without checking a single message. Whatever family fire needed extinguishing, they'd have to find another bucket. I was done being the firefighter. They said what? I clutched my coffee mug tighter the next morning, Tara's face filling my tablet screen. The lodge's breakfast nook offered a sliver of privacy, a blessed escape from the crowded communal tables. I wasn't supposed to hear it. Tara's voice dropped conspiratorially. Brooke was talking to her sister in the bathroom. She said, and I quote, "We just thought Monroe would bring down the vibe." Then something about how you're always so serious and make everything into a big deal. The coffee turned instantly bitter on my tongue. "Bring down the vibe? Mason didn't defend you," Tara continued, her eyes darting away from the camera. "He just nodded along." My phone pinged with a text from Mom. "I'm sorry about all this, sweetheart, but you know how your father and brother get when they've made up their minds. I hope you understand." "This isn't the first time," Tara added, hesitating. "Remember Thanksgiving at Uncle Pete's last year? And Mason's homecoming celebration? What about them?" I asked, but even as the words left my mouth, puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming a horrifying picture. The last-minute location changes. The vague invitations. The surprised looks when I showed up. "They've been doing this for years, Monroe. I thought you knew." The realization settled like a stone in my stomach, chilling me to the core. I'd been strategically uninvited from my own family, subtly pushed aside, for years. "You've changed, May," Grandma May's raspy voice filled my voicemail speaker as I prepared for my first ski lesson. Standing up for yourself for once. I've lived too long to watch this nonsense. You call me when you're ready to talk. Until then, enjoy every minute of that mountain air. I slid the phone into my pocket, a small, unexpected smile playing on my lips. First time on the slopes? My instructor, Kai, adjusted my boot bindings with practiced hands. His weathered face sported decades of laugh lines and a perpetual squint from years facing snow glare. First time doing anything just for me, I admitted. He simply nodded, understanding far more than I'd said. Got yourself some good company then. By afternoon, I'd found myself joining a group of solo travelers at the lodge, a retired teacher from Vermont, a widower celebrating his birthday, a young woman escaping a breakup. They welcomed me, without questions about family or obligations. We shared stories over hot chocolate as easily as if we'd known each other for years. My phone remained silent in my pocket for entire stretches. I actually forgot it existed. The beginner slope isn't much more than a gentle hill, but as I navigated down it without falling, a wild triumph surged through me. The cold air stung my cheeks and my laughter came out in vapor clouds, echoing in the mountain air. My body remembered how to move without hesitation, how to lean into the moment rather than fight it. Not bad for day one. Kai called from behind me. I'd spent my entire life making things easier for everyone else. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me that I was finally learning to do the same for myself. That evening, the lodge's great room buzzed with a rich, almost risky energy. A stone fireplace threw heat and light across comfortable seating clusters, where new friendships were already forming. I sank into a plush leather armchair, warming my hands around a mug of spiked cider, listening to Sophia's story about swimming with dolphins in Hawaii last summer. Suddenly, with a start, I realized my phone hadn't vibrated in hours. I pulled it from my jacket. 15 missed calls, 32 unread messages. But instead of the familiar spike of anxiety, I felt only a curious detachment. Whatever crisis they were navigating, they were doing it without me. And they were surviving. And so was I. As the conversation around me swelled with laughter, I snapped a photo of the breathtaking mountain sunset visible through the massive windows. I posted it to Instagram with steady fingers, captioning it, "Good morning to a new life." The fireplace crackled in the lodge's timber-framed lounge as I raised my mulled wine in a silent toast to myself. 3 days into my Aspen escape, and that knot, the one that had lived between my shoulder blades for years, had finally begun to loosen. My phone buzzed against the polished oak side table. Then again. And again. When it vibrated for the 6th time in under a minute, curiosity, that old familiar pull, finally won. I set down my drink and picked up the device. 17 notifications. All from Tara. Complete meltdown happening, call me now. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me, the new me, wanted to silence it, to guard this fragile piece I'd found. But another part, the part that had spent 3 decades witnessing my family's chaos from the front row, just needed to know. I slipped outside onto the deserted terrace, where pristine snow reflected the resort's golden lights. Tara answered on the first ring, party noise exploding through the speaker. "Oh my God, Monroe, you're missing drama." Her voice carried a strange mix of horror and absolute delight. "Mason's been flirting with Kelly Winters, you know, his high school girlfriend, for the past hour. Right in front of Brooke." "What?" The word formed a visible cloud in the crisp mountain air. It started with reminiscing, then arm-touching, and now they're huddled by the bar laughing like they're the only 2 people here. I pressed my fingers against my temple. And Brooke just threw her champagne in his face. The entire glass. Then stormed out screaming that the engagement is off. Despite everything, my stomach tightened. Old habits surfaced. My mind was already calculating. Asterisk, how to fix this? What words might smooth things over? How to salvage the party? Asterisk, then I remembered. I wasn't important enough to be invited. That's not even the worst part, Tara continued, her voice low and conspiratorial. Mason punched the wall after she left. Pretty sure he broke something in his hand. Your dad's losing it. Mason got into a shouting match with him in front of everyone. The bartender cut them both off, and the manager threatened to shut down the whole thing. I could picture it perfectly. Mason, red-faced and belligerent. Dad, making everything worse with his damage control that only ever damaged. Mom, wringing her hands in the corner, pretending nothing was happening. Grandma May is the real MVP though, Tara added, her voice dropping even further. She walked right up to Mason, looked him dead in the eye, and said, and I'm quoting exactly, "This is what happens when you cut out the only responsible adult in your life." The entire room went silent. A strange sensation bubbled up from my chest, something between a laugh and a sob. For 32 years, I'd been the invisible support beam, the emergency contact, the 3 a.m. problem solver, the reliable one who's there for every crisis. Except this time, I wasn't. I should go, I said finally. I signed up for a moonlight snowshoe hike. What, Monroe? Did you hear what I said? Your brother is imploding, and Brooke just left with her. Bridesmaids. Everyone's looking for you. They know where I am, I said simply. Because I told them on Instagram 3 days ago. I ended the call and silenced my phone completely. 10 minutes later, I was crunching through pristine powder with 6 strangers and a guy named Ethan. The forest around us was silent, except for our breathing and the soft compression of snow beneath our snowshoes. First time? Asked the woman beside me, Catherine from Toronto, as I recalled from introductions. At everything, I admitted. First time snowshoeing. First time in Aspen. First time choosing myself over family drama. She laughed, a genuine sound that echoed among the pines. That last one's the hardest. The physical exertion burned my calves as we climbed, my breath coming in invisible puffs. Each step took deliberate effort, lift, place, press. No room for family anxiety when you're focused on not falling face first into a snowbank. Halfway up, Ethan paused our group at a clearing. The valley spread below us, lights twinkling like fallen stars. Above, the moon hung full and impossibly bright against the black canvas of night. Take a moment, he said quietly. Sometimes we get so focused on the climb that we forget to look around. Something inside me broke open at his words. A small, unexpected laugh escaped me, perhaps my first genuine one in years. Catherine smiled beside me, and 2 other hikers joined in, our laughter rising like steam into the night sky. I am not responsible for fixing their mess. The thought arrived with such clarity that it stopped my breath. All these years, I'd been the damage control specialist, the emotional support beam. But maybe, just maybe, my absence was exactly what they needed. 3 hours later, muscles pleasantly aching from the hike, I returned to my room and turned my phone back on. The notifications cascaded like an avalanche, 14 texts from Mason, escalating from angry, "Where the hell are you?" to accusatory, "This wouldn't have happened if you were there," to desperate, "Please call. Everything's a disaster." 8 missed calls from Dad, followed by a text that made my jaw clench. "We needed you. You abandoned your family when it mattered most." 3 tearful voicemails from Mom, each ending with her signature line, "Please don't make this a thing, honey." And 1 message from Brooke, sent only 30 minutes ago, "I need help. Mason's a mess. Can you talk some sense into him?" My thumb hovered over Mason's message, muscle memory nearly taking over. For a heartbeat, I considered what I'd always done. Step in, smooth things over, absorb the blame, fix the unfixable. Instead, I opened my contacts. I found Mason's name and pressed block contact. The screen asked if I was sure. I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. I blocked Dad next, then Mom, then Brooke. Each tap felt like I was shedding a heavy burden, a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't even mine. I called the front desk. "Hello, this is room 342. I'd like to extend my stay by 4 more days, please." Afterward, I took a selfie by the fireplace, the flames casting a warm glow across my face. I'd never looked more at peace. I posted it with a caption that would have been unthinkable just days ago. 0 regrets. 100% peace. Then I silenced my phone, placed it on the nightstand, and for the first time in my adult life, I slept without waiting for it to ring. I was halfway down Silverado, a blue run that would have absolutely terrified me a week ago, when my phone vibrated against my thigh. For a blissful moment, I considered ignoring it, just like the 14 other calls I'd let go to voicemail. But something, that old, familiar sense of responsibility, made me slow my descent and pull to the side of the trail. Grandma May's name lit up my screen. Unlike the others, she deserved an answer. Monroe? Her voice crackled with a mix of relief and concern. They're losing their minds trying to reach you. I watched a father and daughter glide past, their laughter carrying on the crisp mountain air. I needed some space. Space, she snorted. Your brother has left 17 voicemails. Started with, how could you do this to me, and has worked his way to, please, I need you. Her voice softened. Your father even sent an apology text. Your mother made him, of course, but still. I closed my eyes, feeling the sun warm my face. And Brooke? Her sister showed up at your apartment yesterday, thought you might be hiding out. Grandma's laugh was sharp and knowing. Found nothing, but your neighbor watering your plants. I asked Diane to check on them, I murmured, watching a snow bunny hop between pine trees. Where are you, honey? For the first time in days, I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. Somewhere I should have gone years ago. Perfect form. Victor, my ski instructor, called as I navigated the final turn. 3 days ago, he'd patiently helped me up after countless falls on the bunny slope. Today, I was carving confident turns down a run aptly named Freedom. See you at the lodge for a brisket, he asked as we reached the bottom. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, surprising myself with how quickly I'd fallen into this new routine. The lodge staff knew me now. Emma at the front desk saved me the morning paper. Paolo remembered my coffee order. And Jeanette, the concierge, stopped me with recommendations for dinner spots. Monroe. Jeanette waved as I entered the lobby. The Hendersons wondered if you'd join them tonight. They're doing a family dinner at their cabin and thought you might enjoy a home-cooked meal. I paused, momentarily confused by the invitation. The Hendersons, a retired couple I'd chatted with during a snowshoe tour, had no obligation to me. They wanted nothing fixed, designed, or solved. They simply enjoyed my company. I'd love to, I answered, and the sheer simplicity of the exchange nearly brought tears to my eyes. Later, in my room, I opened the leather-bound journal I'd purchased in the gift shop. I flipped past days of entries, watching my handwriting transform from shaky and uncertain to bold and flowing. Day 1 arrived broken, wondering if I've made a terrible mistake. Day 5, skied my first blue run today. Fell twice, got up twice. No one seemed disappointed in me. Day 7, I recognized my reflection again. I pressed my pen to a fresh page. Day 8, the woman who arrived is not the woman who will leave. Dr. Winters watched me from across her sunlit office in the resort's wellness center. You've made a deliberate choice to disengage, she observed. It wasn't a question. I nodded, turning my silenced phone over in my hands. 67 notifications. I hadn't opened a single one. Tell me about your family, she suggested. The unfiltered version. And I did. The words poured out like a spring runoff. The 18 months of care packages during Mason's deployment, the money I'd transferred without hesitation, the invitations I'd designed without compensation, the birthdays I'd missed to meet their demands, the savings account I'd depleted solving their emergencies. Going back to those patterns would be self-destruction, I concluded, surprised by my own certainty. Dr. Winters nodded. And yet, are they realizing what they've lost? Are they? I asked, not entirely convinced. People rarely change until the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing, she replied. Your absence has tipped that balance. A new message from Tara appeared as I settled by the stone fireplace with a book. Grandma May moved into your parents' guest room. Says she's setting things straight. Dad nearly had an aneurysm. I smiled, picturing my grandmother's take-no-prisoners approach. Another message followed quickly. Mason admitted to your dad that they've taken you for granted. Dad actually agreed. I nearly fell off my chair. Before I could respond, a video message arrived from Brooke. I hesitated, then played it. Her face appeared, eyes red and puffy. Monroe, she began, voice breaking. I've been awful to you. Not just about the party. For months, years, really. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. No careful makeup, no rehearsed speech. I don't know why you'd forgive me, but I hope you'll let me try to make it right. I set my phone down, emotions swirling, as I reached for my wine glass. The front desk called. "Miss Taylor, there's a delivery for you downstairs." The clerk handed me a cream-colored envelope, addressed in Mason's unmistakable handwriting. I traced my finger over my name, written with unusual care. Inside, a single page began, "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to try." I stood motionless in the grand lobby, snow falling softly beyond the windows, wondering how long the journey back to forgiveness should take, and whether immediate reconciliation would heal or harm us both. I folded my last sweater, a cream cashmere I'd treated myself to at the Lodge Boutique, and tucked it into my suitcase. 9 days ago, I'd thrown clothes into the same bag with trembling hands and tear-blurred vision. Today, my movements were measured, deliberate. The woman who'd fled here barely resembled the one preparing to return. My phone buzzed. "Dad, just checking what time we should pick you up tomorrow," his text read. I typed my response without hesitation. "No need. I've arranged a rental car." 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then, "Seems unnecessary." "We don't mind." "I do," I replied. Then silenced my notifications. Control, I realized, begins with small decisions. The rental car. The neutral meeting location. The very terms of re-engagement after what they were all calling your little breakdown, as if standing up for myself could only be explained by mental fragility. From my balcony, I took one last look at the mountains that had witnessed my transformation. Tomorrow, I'd meet my family at Meridian Coffee Shop, not our kitchen table, where I'd swallowed criticisms with Sunday pancakes for 3 decades. "Thank you," I whispered to the peaks, silhouetted against the twilight sky. I spotted them through Meridian's window before entering. Dad checking his watch, Mom nervously stirring her tea, Mason with his arm around Brooke, who was scrolling through her phone. Their tableau of impatience was so familiar it almost pulled me back into old patterns. But I straightened my shoulders and pushed open the door. "Monroe." Mom spotted me first, half rising with that anxious smile. "We saved you your favorite corner spot." I slid into the empty chair, setting down my leather portfolio with deliberate care. The weight of it grounded me. "You look different," Mason said, squinting slightly. "Skiing agrees with me," I answered, making eye contact with the barista instead of my brother. "Well," Dad cleared his throat, taking charge as expected. "Let's just put this unfortunate business behind us. Your mother's been beside herself, and Mason and Brooke need help planning the rescheduled engagement party." Brooke nodded eagerly. "We're thinking the first weekend in April. I've already created a spreadsheet of tasks. I've highlighted yours in yellow." My mother reached across the table, her fingers trembling slightly as they covered mine. "Sweetheart, please. The family needs to stay together, especially with everything that's happened." I gently removed my hand from beneath hers and opened my portfolio. "Before we move forward, we need to address what happened." "Monroe," Dad warned, his voice tight. "Dwelling on unpleasantness." "I'm not dwelling," I interrupted, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm establishing context." I withdrew a sheet of paper from my portfolio. On February 16th, Mason called at 3 a.m. from Germany because his bank card was compromised. I transferred $2,000 from my emergency fund within 10 minutes. I looked directly at my brother. "That loan remains unpaid." Mason shifted uncomfortably. "I've been meaning to." "Last September," I continued, "I missed Diane's birthday dinner to finish your engagement announcement because Brooke wasn't feeling the professional design you'd already paid for." I placed my phone on the table, screen up. "And here are the texts from Dad telling me to not make this a thing when I was excluded from a 120-person engagement party." Silence fell across our table, heavy and unfamiliar. My family stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "I'm not here to accuse," I said, folding my hands on the table. "I'm here to establish boundaries." Dad's face reddened. "Now see here, no, Jack." Mom interjected with uncharacteristic firmness. "Let her speak." I pulled out another sheet of paper and placed it beside the first. "This is what I need from each of you moving forward." They leaned forward almost in unison, eyes scanning the typed list. 1. Acknowledgement of my time, effort, and contributions. 2. Advance notice for family events, minimum 2 weeks. 3. Repayment of outstanding loans within 6 months. 4. No more free design work, family discount of 25% only. 5. Respect for my no without guilt trips or manipulation. If these boundaries are crossed, I continued, my gaze sweeping across their faces, I will limit contact until the behavior changes. I've learned that love without respect isn't sustainable. And if we refuse this ultimatum? Dad's voice wavered between anger and disbelief. Then you'll be making a choice about what kind of relationship you want with me, I said, straightening the papers with steady hands. And I'll respect your choice by making my own. Mason wiped an unexpected tear. Monroe, I didn't realize. I know, I said, softening slightly. That's part of the problem. These seem reasonable, Mom offered tentatively, glancing at Dad. Brooke's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched high. So, you're not helping with the wedding planning after everything that's happened? I'll help within these parameters, I answered. But there's something else. I've accepted a 6-month design contract in Colorado. I start next month. You're leaving. Dad's fist hit the table, rattling our cups. Just like that. I'm pursuing an opportunity, I corrected him. Just like you always encouraged Mason to do. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, then slumped back in his chair. Mason leaned forward, his eyes filled with dawning dread. I've been a terrible brother, haven't I? Before I could answer, the coffee shop door swung open and Grandma, May, made her entrance, impeccably timed as always. Well, look at you, she said, her eyes appraising me with approval. About time someone stood up for themselves in this family. She pulled up a chair from the neighboring table and wedged it between Dad and Mom. Now, she said, placing her weathered hands flat on the table, let's talk about how this family moves forward with a little more equity and a lot more respect. I caught my reflection in the window, shoulders back, chin level, eyes clear. The mountains had given me this gift, a woman who finally valued herself enough to demand others do the same. Mountains still frame my view as I adjust the blinds in my Colorado apartment. 6 months in this place, and the sight still steals my breath. The crisp February air seeps through an inch of open window, a luxury I never allowed myself back home, where I paid the heating bills my parents claimed they couldn't afford. I run my fingers along the row of postcards pinned to my cork wall, Aspen, Boulder, Santa Fe, Denver. Places I've visited since truly claiming my independence, each one a milestone, marking distance from the girl who'd cancel plans at the first hint of family need. My phone lights up with Mom's weekly video call. I take a deep breath before answering, remembering my therapist's advice. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you control. Monroe. Mom's face fills the screen, her hair freshly colored for the church potluck. You look rested. I am. No explanation. No apology. That's new too. Your father asked about your project for that coffee company, she says, pausing, fumbling with her reading glasses. He saw their billboard off Highway 40. Said it had your signature style. 6 months ago, I'd have launched into an extended explanation, seeking validation. Today, I just smile. It was a good client. They've already commissioned 3 more designs. A notification slides across my screen, a text from Mason. Sample wedding invitations came today. Using your color scheme suggestion. Thanks, sis. No desperate plea for help. No last-minute crisis. Just acknowledgement. Progress. After we hang up, I open my laptop to an email from Tara with apartment listings in Denver. Consider me as a roommate, she's written. Colorado looks good on you. I sip my coffee and allow myself a moment of quiet pride. The family that once saw me only as a has or a fixer has begun the awkward, imperfect work of seeing me as a person. Grandma May's weekly letter sits unopened on my counter, her elegant cursive visible through the envelope. Her correspondence has been my anchor through this transition. Last week, she wrote, "Your father actually asked me how to make your mother's birthday special without putting the burden on you. First time in 40 years that man's asked for advice." I tuck the letter into my journal for later, savoring the anticipation. Today is for focus. My design business has tripled since moving here, clients who value my boundaries lining up for my services. The invitation sits on my coffee table. Mason and Brooks revised wedding plans. A simple ceremony. 30 guests. My name on the envelope in Mason's handwriting, not Brooks' mother's secretary's. I haven't decided yet. My therapist nodded thoughtfully when I showed it to her. Attending doesn't mean returning to old patterns, she reminded me. Hotels exist for a reason. Later, I'll meet with Jenna, a design student struggling with family expectations. She reminds me of myself, talented but hesitant to claim space. The scholarship I established at the local college connected us. You're helping me give myself permission, she told me last week. A familiar heaviness tries to settle on my shoulders as I remember next week's women's retreat, where I'm speaking about boundaries. The old Monroe would panic at being seen as an expert on something she'd only recently mastered. But that was before. Instead, I close my eyes and practice my evening gratitude ritual, thankful for courage, for mountains, for the quiet satisfaction of a life that belongs to me. Through the window, the setting sun paints my walls copper, the same metallic shade I was perfecting on Mason's original invitations, the day everything changed. I rest my hand on the invitation. Tomorrow, I'll book a hotel room in my hometown. And yes, I'll reply yes. Not because I'm needed, but because I choose to go. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself first. Have you ever had to step away from everything to truly discover who you are? Or face that impossible choice between loyalty to others and loyalty to yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think. Asterisk, asterisk. The moment my boss's son took over, he fired me saying, "We don't need lazy people like you." I smiled politely and walked out. The next day, his father asked, "Why the hell did you fire her?" When he read the contract, he was shocked by what it revealed. You know that feeling when your entire world just shifts? Like one minute you're standing there, completely normal, and the next, everything you thought you knew is gone? That's exactly how I felt the day my new CEO, the founder's spoiled son, fired me for being lazy right before he unknowingly handed me the keys to his own destruction. What the hell happened next, you ask? Oh, you have to hear this. I can still see it, crystal clear, like it was yesterday. I was in the office break room, just trying to get my morning coffee right, a little dash of oat milk, you know? When Ryan, the new CEO, and the founder's son walked in. He didn't even acknowledge me. No, good morning, no smile, nothing. He just looked through me, like I was some old piece of furniture he decided to finally toss out. "Lily," he snapped, "I need to see you in my office." Now. Not a request. A command. I'd poured nearly 11 years of my life into that company. 11. I built the client services department from the ground up, negotiated over 100 contracts, trained most of the team that was now sitting just outside his fancy new office door. But none of that mattered to Ryan. His dad, Mr. Cole, built this company with grit and loyalty, but Ryan? He inherited the title and, apparently, thought it gave him the right to play God. I followed him, my chest tightening with a tension I couldn't shake. He didn't even bother to sit down. He just stood there, cold as ice. "You're fired," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. "We don't need lazy people like you dragging this place down." I blinked. At first, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he replied, casually flipping through a stack of papers, like he was deciding what to have for lunch. "You can collect your things and leave." Effective immediately. I just stood there, stunned. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to demand an explanation. But then, a strange calm washed over me. Instead, I smiled. A calm, polite, deliberate smile. "Understood," I said, my voice betraying absolutely nothing. "Have a nice day, Ryan." I walked out of that office with my head held high, but inside, I was shaking. My team looked at me as I passed, their faces etched with concern. A few started to stand, ready to ask, but I gave them a subtle shake of my head. Don't make this harder, I thought. I packed my desk in silence. Driving home, memories flooded my mind. 11 years. 11 years I'd given this company. More time than I gave my own family. Late nights, working through holidays, taking client calls while holding back tears after my divorce. I gave them everything. And now? I was dismissed like I was nothing. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Why? That question haunted me all night. I barely slept a wink. Something about the way Ryan had said it, so confidently, so carelessly, didn't feel right. And the timing? It was bizarre. We were on the brink of finalizing one of the company's largest contracts, a deal I'd spent 6 months preparing. I knew the client inside and out. I'd even booked the final review meeting for that very Friday. And now I was gone. Had he even looked at the contract details? The next morning, just after 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. I let it ring, unsure if I could handle another blow. But curiosity won again. Lily? It's Mr. Cole. The voice sent a jolt down my spine. The real CEO. The man who hired me 11 years ago after a single interview. I just walked into the office, he said, his voice tight, strained. Why the hell did you pack up and leave? What happened? I hesitated. Your son fired me. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. What? Yesterday, he asked, his voice low. He said I was lazy. And that I wasn't needed anymore. There was a long pause before he spoke again, this time slowly, like he was trying to hold himself together. Lily, did he read your contract? I furrowed my brows. What do you mean? He's supposed to finalize the Kingswell deal today, isn't he? Yes. We were scheduled to meet them at 11 o'clock. Jesus Christ. I heard papers rustling, then a loud thud, like he'd slammed something onto his desk. Lily, your contract has a clause, he said. One I insisted on after the last acquisition disaster. You're not just the account manager. You're the only authorized negotiator for the Kingswell deal. I froze. He can't close the deal without you. Not legally, not ethically, not even practically, Mr. Cole continued. That contract will fall apart unless you're there. A slow-burning realization settled in my chest. He hadn't read it. Ryan had no idea what he'd done. And that's when something inside me shifted. The betrayal still hurt, yes, but now I felt something else entirely, control. He had pulled the trigger far too quickly, and now the gun was pointed squarely at himself. Mr. Cole hung up without another word. I could feel his fury radiating through the silence that followed. I sat motionless in my apartment, coffee growing cold beside me, staring at nothing in particular. He didn't know. His son had fired me without even reading the contract. I leaned back on the couch and let out a quiet, bitter laugh. After 11 years, this was how it went down. A spoiled, impulsive man-boy trying to play CEO, making decisions like they were moves in a video game. But real companies don't respond well to bad calls, and this one was about to find that out the hard way. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. Part of me wanted to get dressed and show up to the office, just to watch the fallout. But another part, the one that had endured years of thankless overtime and swallowed my pride more times than I could count, wanted to let them burn. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13 a.m., I got another call. This time, it was Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. This one from reception. Then legal. Then accounting. I stared at my phone as it buzzed nonstop, lighting up like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemail icon blinked at me, relentless. I tapped it open. Lily? Hi, it's Ryan. His voice was strained, laced with barely disguised panic. Listen, there was a misunderstanding yesterday. I might have acted too fast. We need you back today. It's urgent. Please call me. Urgent. The word rolled around in my head like a marble in a glass. He hadn't said sorry. Not once. Not even in a fake corporate way. Instead, it was panic disguised as politeness. I took a sip of my cold coffee, still not moving from the couch. At 10:32, my phone buzzed again. This time, a number I hadn't saved in years, Nicole, a former colleague. We'd grown close when she was in my department before she transferred to marketing. I picked up. Lily, you won't believe what's happening here, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Try me. Ryan just got chewed out by his dad. Like, in front of everyone. The meeting room was full. Mr. Cole walked in and slammed the Kingswell contract on the table. I raised an eyebrow. He brought the contract. Oh yeah, and he asked one question. Did you read this before firing Lily? Nicole continued. And Ryan tried to bluff, said something about moving in a new direction and reevaluating roles. But Mr. Cole didn't buy it. He flipped to the clause you always talked about, the one that says you're the sole negotiator on the Kingswell account. That clause was there for a reason, Lily. Everyone knows, except Ryan. She paused, and I could hear office murmurs in the background. Lily, he looked pale. Like, ghost pale. He realized he's the reason Kingswell's about to walk. I exhaled slowly. And what did Mr. Cole say? He told him if this deal falls through, your position here becomes negotiable. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There it was. The first crack in Ryan's armor. I don't know what you're planning, Nicole added, but whatever it is, you have the upper hand now. I ended the call with a soft thank you, then stood and looked out the window. The skyline was quiet still. I always found comfort in that, the city indifferent to human chaos, going on as usual. At 11:15, another message came through. This time from Mr. Cole himself. Lily, I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come in. Not just for the deal, but so we can talk privately. It was tempting, but I wasn't ready to just walk back in like nothing happened. Not yet. Ryan's mistake wasn't just about a contract, it was about respect, about trust, and about the years I had given, years that couldn't be replaced by a panicked phone call and a seat at a negotiation table. Still, something stirred inside me. I wasn't a petty person, but I wasn't weak either. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I picked up my phone and finally responded. Not with a call, but a message. I'll consider returning to finalize the Kingswell deal, but only under specific conditions. I'd like to speak with Mr. Cole directly beforehand. I hit send. Then I changed out of my pajamas and began to prepare. By the time I arrived at the office, it was just past noon. I didn't use the employee entrance. I walked through the main lobby like a guest. A move I knew would draw attention. Everyone knew I had been fired the day before. My return now was more than a quiet comeback. It was a statement. The receptionist stood up the moment she saw me. Miss Harris. Lily, she stammered. Mr. Cole is expecting you. Right this way. As I followed her down the hall, I noticed the atmosphere had changed. People looked up from their desks, conversations paused. There was a sense of quiet tension, like the building itself was holding its breath. Mr. Cole was standing at the door to his office when I arrived. He wasn't smiling. Lily, he said, nodding. Thank you for coming in. I nodded back, but didn't extend my hand. He stepped aside, letting me walk past him into the office. It was quiet for a moment as I took a seat across from his massive oak desk. He closed the door behind him, leaned against it, and let out a long sigh. I made a mistake, he began. A big one. I gave my son too much authority too fast. I wanted him to prove himself, but I didn't expect him to burn bridges before even learning how to build them. I stayed silent. He sat down, his voice softened. What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and frankly, it jeopardized a deal we've worked over half a year to secure. I nodded slowly. Yes, it did. I read the contract again this morning. Every word. You are given full autonomy over the Kingswell account. Legally, the client won't recognize anyone else as a representative of this company during negotiations. That clause was put in place after the Steel Ridge debacle. I remember it well, I said quietly. I was the one who managed the fallout. His eyes met mine. You didn't deserve what happened yesterday, he said, and I'd like to offer you your job back with full authority to finish the deal. Whatever conditions you need, we'll make them work. There was sincerity in his tone, regret too. This wasn't just about the deal. It was about leadership, accountability, dignity. I'll return, I said. But I want everything in writing. A revised contract. Clear autonomy over Kingswell and no interference from Ryan. He nodded immediately. Done. And one more thing, I added, my voice firm. This can't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. A long silence followed. Then he gave me a slow, thoughtful nod. You have my word. With that, I stood. The moment I stepped out of his office, I could see Ryan standing down the hall, arms crossed, pretending to be deep in conversation with a junior executive. But his eyes locked on mine the second I appeared. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I walked straight past him, and I swear, for a second, I saw the exact moment he realized his control was slipping. By 1 p.m., the boardroom was ready. The Kingswell team had just arrived, and we had about 30 minutes before the official meeting. I reviewed the documents one last time, confirming all the points we had previously negotiated. Their CEO, Mr. Saad, was a no-nonsense man with sharp instincts. He valued trust above all, and any whiff of internal disorganization would send him running. As I placed the printed Arabic translation of the final terms onto the table, I caught sight of Ryan pacing outside the glass walls of the meeting room like a caged animal. Mr. Cole stepped out to intercept him. Their muffled voices escalated quickly until Mr. Cole's hand shot up, silencing him. Ryan's face turned crimson. He looked over his shoulder at me with a mix of rage and humiliation, then walked away. That was the last time I saw him that day. At 1:30 sharp, Mr. Saad entered with his aides. I greeted him in Arabic, and his eyes lit up. He smiled, a rare gesture from him. You remembered, he said warmly. Respect goes a long way. The meeting began. It went flawlessly. 2 hours later, we shook hands and signed the deal. After they left, Mr. Cole approached me again, this time his face showing genuine relief. You saved us, he said. And I owe you more than an apology. You owe your company a leader, I replied. One who knows the difference between power and responsibility. He didn't argue. Later that evening, as I walked to my car, the tension I'd carried for the past 48 hours finally began to lift. I had come back not as an employee, but as someone who understood her value and demanded it be recognized. But I also knew this wasn't over. Ryan might have been quiet today, but men like him don't disappear. They retreat, and then they retaliate. By the following week, the Kingswell deal had made headlines in our industry newsletter. A breakthrough in cross-border negotiations, it read. Cole and Company secures a historic partnership with Middle Eastern distributor through tailored strategy and multilingual leadership. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone in the company knew who had sealed that deal. My inbox was flooded with quiet congratulations, internal messages from staff who had stayed silent during the storm. Some were from juniors I'd mentored years ago. Others were from managers who had once ignored me in meetings, but now praised my leadership under pressure. I appreciated their words, but I wasn't naive. I knew how quickly people shift when the wind changes direction. The mood around the office had lightened. There were smiles, laughter again in the break room. Mr. Cole had made it clear Ryan was no longer involved in high-level decision-making until further notice. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Small things began to happen. First, it was the expense reports. My reimbursement for the Kingswell travel was delayed. Then, documents I had submitted for approval were returned to me and signed, without explanation. Next, an email I never sent, allegedly from my address, was flagged by IT. It contained incorrect client information and had been forwarded to one of our overseas partners. Luckily, the partner was someone I had a good relationship with, and he reached out directly to clarify. But the mistake had already planted doubt. I reported it to our internal systems team. They said there was no sign of external hacking. The message had originated from inside the office. That's when I knew. Ryan was behind it. He was no longer trying to fire me. That approach had failed. Now he wanted to make me look incompetent, to smear my reputation, slowly, subtly, until I either quit in frustration or someone else decided I was a liability. It was classic corporate sabotage, and it wasn't the first time I'd seen it. Back at my first job, fresh out of university, I worked under a director who played the same game. He wouldn't confront you directly, but he'd cut off your resources, isolate you from projects, quietly poison your name until the only option left was to disappear. But I wasn't 22 anymore. I wasn't going to disappear. I documented everything. Every missed email, every mistake that I hadn't made, every delay. I had learned the hard way that paper trails are more powerful than emotions in environments like this. I even started using a private notebook, logging times, dates, conversations, just in case. Then one afternoon, I overheard something that confirmed my suspicions. I was passing the conference room when I heard Ryan's voice inside, too loud for a private discussion. "She's unstable," he said. "Since she came back, she's been a bit aggressive. I don't think she's fit to manage high-pressure clients." I stopped in my tracks. "I'm just saying," he continued, "maybe we should start thinking about succession planning for client services. She's clearly overextended." Another voice responded, someone I didn't recognize, a newer executive maybe. But the Kingswell deal, she pulled that off under serious pressure. Ryan scoffed. "She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck." I stood frozen for a few moments, then quietly walked away. My blood ran cold, not out of fear, but from the icy precision of his tactics. He was planting seeds again, poisoning the well. That evening, I stayed late. The office was quiet, the halls dim. I sat alone in the glass meeting room, staring at the city lights, wondering how many more battles I would have to fight just to keep doing my job. And then a voice broke the silence. "Still here?" I looked up. It was Mr. Cole. "I could ask you the same," I replied. He stepped inside, placed a folder on the table. "Your revised contract with everything we agreed on." I opened it, read through the language. It was solid. I nodded in approval. "I've also started an internal audit," he added. "Too many things have been misfiled lately." I looked up sharply. He met my gaze. "I'm not blind, Lily. I know Ryan isn't finished." "Why haven't you stopped him?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. There was a long pause before he answered. "Because I needed to see how far he'd go." He sounded tired. More like a father than a CEO in that moment. "You're protecting the company," I said. He shook his head slowly. "I'm trying to protect both of you. But maybe it's too late for one of you." I closed the folder. "I don't need protection. I need you to decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind." His eyes lingered on mine, then he turned and left. And I knew something bigger was coming. The office felt colder that week, not because of the weather, but because the air between people had changed. Conversations dropped to whispers when I walked by. Some employees smiled at me, others avoided eye contact altogether. The internal audit had begun, and everyone knew it. People were nervous. So was I. I hadn't asked Mr. Cole to launch an audit, but deep down, I was relieved that he had. I needed the truth out in the open, not just for me, but for everyone who had been walking on eggshells since Ryan took over. Still, I knew how this game worked in corporations. Truth doesn't always lead to justice. Sometimes it leads to quiet exits and golden handshakes. Sometimes it's buried so deep behind red tape that the damage becomes irreversible. That Thursday, I was called into the audit committee's temporary office, an old storage room turned war room. Files were stacked on tables, monitors glowed with data, and a whiteboard was filled with timelines and digital breadcrumbs. David, the lead internal auditor, greeted me. "Lily, thanks for coming in. We'd like to ask you a few questions about some recent irregularities." I nodded and took a seat. He pulled up a file on the screen. "First, this email that appeared to be from your account. We've confirmed it was sent from a shared workstation near the break room. The credentials were manually entered, so..." "Someone used my login?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, someone had your credentials, copied them. Most likely, this wasn't phishing. It was internal." I folded my arms. I reported that incident the day it happened. He gave a tight smile. "Yes, and we're glad you did. We found a few others like it, emails rewritten, spreadsheets altered, sign-offs removed. Always traced to shared machines, always under your name." The weight in my chest grew heavier. "This was coordinated." David hesitated. "Yes, and we've narrowed down the list of people who had access. We've also noticed unusual patterns linked to Ryan's executive assistant's login." I sat still. He continued carefully. "We're not accusing anyone yet, but there's a clear pattern. Sabotage intended to discredit you, and possibly others." I clenched my jaw. "So what happens now?" "That's where it gets complicated," he said. "Mr. Cole asked us to present our findings directly to him. He's made it clear he wants the truth, all of it. No filters. I nodded slowly. Then I'll be there. David raised his eyebrows. You're not required. I will be there, I repeated. If this is going to surface, I want to look everyone in the eye. He didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the others who had left quietly over the past year, talented employees in their 30s and 40s who had simply moved on without much notice. People who had once been considered rising stars. I used to think it was just turnover. Now, I wondered how many of them had been quietly pushed out by Ryan's games. I arrived early to the executive boardroom the next morning. Mr. Cole was already there, staring out the window like a man waiting for the final card to fall. David and 2 other auditors came in next. Then Ryan arrived, 10 minutes late, looking smug. Phone in hand. Not a trace of concern on his face until he saw me. He paused at the door. She's not on the audit committee. Mr. Cole didn't turn. She's here at my request. Ryan shifted his weight uncomfortably. This is supposed to be internal, confidential. Then you should have kept it that way when you used company resources to fabricate emails, I said, my voice calm but sharp. Ryan scoffed. That's ridiculous. David spoke up. We've traced multiple login attempts tied to your assistant's account, Mr. Cole. All connected to irregularities targeting Lily's work. There's a clear timeline. Ryan's face began to shift, his practiced smugness cracking. You're reaching. She's just bitter about being let go. I looked him in the eye. You didn't let me go, Ryan. You sabotaged me. And you almost tanked the biggest deal this company has landed in 5 years. Mr. Cole finally turned. I gave you a chance, he said quietly. I gave you more than one. And you've done nothing but tear down the people trying to build something real here. Ryan's bravado faltered. This isn't what you think. No, Mr. Cole cut in. It's worse. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Mr. Cole stood. The board will be reviewing this report. Until then, you are suspended, effective immediately. Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but the words never came. He looked at me one last time, this time not with rage, but with disbelief, like he had finally realized that none of his usual tricks were going to save him now. He walked out in silence. I stayed behind. Mr. Cole exhaled, his shoulders sagging. I failed him, he said, as a leader and maybe as a father. You can't lead someone who refuses to grow, I said quietly. But you can lead the company. You still have that choice. He looked at me, then nodded. And for the first time since this all began, I felt the weight start to lift. 2 weeks had passed since the audit meeting, but the impact of that morning still echoed through every corner of the building. Ryan hadn't returned, and the once proud smirk he carried like a badge was now the stuff of whispered office gossip. The board moved quickly. The evidence was too strong, too detailed, too damning to ignore. The falsified emails, the login traces, the unexplained disappearance of files, the attempt to weaponize HR complaints, all under Ryan's direction or through people he manipulated. When the final report came out, it was clear Ryan hadn't just tried to sabotage me. He had compromised the integrity of the company itself. His suspension became a termination. The official announcement cited breaches of ethical conduct and internal misconduct. No lawsuits, no press release, just a quiet exit through the back door of corporate history. But word spread anyway. I thought I'd feel triumphant when I heard the news. Instead, I felt calm. Not victorious, just steady. Like I had weathered the storm and now I could finally breathe. A few days later, Mr. Cole called me into his office. Close the door, he said. I did. He sat at his desk, a folder in front of him, but he didn't open it yet. I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything that's happened, he began, and what I want this company to be moving forward. I didn't speak. I let him finish. You've shown more leadership in the past month than most executives show in a career. You protected our biggest deal, held your composure in a public humiliation, and navigated personal attacks with professionalism. That's the kind of person I want helping run this company. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a promotion letter, Director of Client Strategy. An executive-level role, one that reported directly to him. I looked up, startled. I didn't ask for this, I said. I know, he said. That's why you deserve it. I hesitated, then gave him a small nod. If I accept this, I want to say in how we move forward. I don't want to just hold a title. I want to rebuild this culture the right way. He smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my new office, a temporary one while renovations were underway, I stared at the blank nameplate on the door. For years, I'd walked these halls, wondering if anyone really saw the work I did, the late nights, the client saves, the fires I put out without a single word of credit. I thought staying quiet was the best way to keep peace, to not cause friction. But silence had almost cost me everything. It wasn't just about a contract or a position. It was about remembering that competence is not arrogance, and professionalism is not weakness. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and sabotaged. But I had never been defeated. And I hadn't let myself become bitter in the process. That, to me, was the real win. In the weeks that followed, I started reshaping the department. I reopened lines of communication. I reinstated people who had been pushed out unfairly. I created an anonymous reporting system so no one else had to fear retaliation for speaking up. I even made time for the younger employees who were just starting out, some of whom had witnessed what I went through and quietly asked how I stayed strong. I told them the truth. You don't always get to pick the battles, I said. But you do get to decide who you become in the middle of them. As for Ryan, last I heard he was interviewing at smaller firms out of state, but his reputation had caught up to him. Some said Mr. Cole pulled strings to make sure his name didn't get dragged publicly. Maybe that was a father's last act of love. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. One afternoon, while walking through the office, I passed the glass wall that once housed the Kingswell negotiation. I paused for a moment, remembering everything: the sabotage, the call, the panic, the eventual triumph. That single deal had changed the course of my career. But the real shift happened the moment I smiled at Ryan and walked out of his office, refusing to beg. That was the turning point. Not because I gave up, but because I knew what I was worth, and I refused to let anyone, boss's son or not, take that from me again. What about you? Have you ever had to fight for your place, for your worth, in a situation like this? Or have you seen someone else go through it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories.